Was that?
I just wanted to make sure you're still with us.
Yeah, I am. I've just moved into another room and I've got better sound here. So
Awesome.
I'm with you even more than I was.
I love that for you. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so we are now back in open. And we are at number 6, the consent agenda. Would someone like to move the consent agenda, please?
Just like to pull 621 joint BC Hydro WLNG media statement.
Become 8.1 under items removed from consent agenda.
Great. Yeah, Friday that is. We can go to the end of some other section. 6.2.1. Okay, so with the rest of the consent agenda, would someone like to move the package? Moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Herford. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. 8.1. A letter pulled from the consent agenda. Okay, we got there. You were coming in.
Okay.
Because she may be able to answer any kind of question you may have.
I just wanted to make a comment, actually.
It's valuable
Okay.
here, so let's just.
Sure.
You will not be on the hot seat. Be good guidance. Witnessing the comment. Go ahead, Chris.
So some of my colleagues attended the public information meeting. That was one of the drivers behind the letter we got here. And it was a really frustrating meeting, a joint meeting with Fiber and BC Hydro. A lot of questions unanswered in a lot of instances where BC Hydro rep and Wood Fiber rep were standing side by side. Someone would ask a question, and the BC Hydro person would say, well, I can't, it's not my place to answer. That's a Wood Fiber question. They're standing right there, and then Wood Fiber wouldn't answer it, but they misdirected. There's this ping-ponging back and forth of like, well, it's the other, yeah, you're both right there. And such a frustrating experience. And when I contrast that to the amount of information, dialogue, what I see in the rest of the regional district, when I see the reports and presentations from BC Hydro, what was in this public information was a completely different thing. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's different teams, and I just want to take the opportunity if the BC Hydro folks want to get together and sort of talk to what's going, the folks that are handling the rest of the SLRD. There might be something to learn there. And so I wanted to kind of reinforce what our constituents wrote us about and make that comment, because it was just sitting at this table, it was very strange to be in that meeting, knowing how I normally see BC Hydro operate. So.
Okay,
That I just moved to receive.
great. Any other questions or comments on this topic? Being none, moved by Director Pettengill to receive the letter, seconded by Director Herford. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Ms. Lillooet. Okay, so now we're on the report of the chair, and we have an opportunity for directors to share something of significance in your area, if you wish, and keep it to a sort of reasonable minimum if possible, so we can everyone who wants to speak. Anyone with anything that they'd like to add? Go ahead, Director Madden.
Last week, with Director Birch Jones, Mike Morley from Ponderosa, and BC Timber Sales, Chief Travis Peters from Naquaqua. We met with BC Timber Sales up on the High Line 15 years ago approximately. They wanted to log an area up there, which was Mule Deer Winter Range. The water source for Ponderosa subdivision and all that. And Mike Morley actually took the government to court, and over I think a 2-year period, he won the case with a lot of money on his part for lawyers and such. And the judge at the time had said, no logging of this area. So now, that many years later, BC Timber Sales has come back. And now they're saying, oh, no, we're not gonna log it, we're gonna fire smart it. But in order to fire smart it, we have to take out these particular trees, which are all, you know. And so, you know, we had a really good meeting, but, you know, I think we as a regional district have to pay far more attention to what's going on in our area. With BC Timber Sales, because they've been up in the back behind our place in the Hailmore and completely destroyed a mule deer winter range. You know, I used to be able to go up there and see 40, 50 deer all winter. Now I see none. And then another area was set aside for a winter range, and a TERP grant at the time, which was a federal government grant to enhance the area for that, was used. Naquatwa did the work in there. And now they've come back 2 times, maybe 3 even. They go in and they flag it, and I've noticed it, so I, you know, contact forestry and get them shut down, so to speak. But now in that area, what they've done, with the help of the biologists in Squamish, they've moved the winter range polygon up the Bloody Mountain. And I'm going, how stupid is that? So you've put the winter range in deeper snow. That makes a lot of difference, you know. So anyways, just to shorten this up, we need to be really aware, and we need to make sure that BC Timber Sales, when they are planning any work anywhere in our regional district, they need to come here and present their projects to us. And we need to then be able to have staff look at these and follow them and make sure they're not taking advantage of the situation, so to speak. And obviously BC Timber Sales is the government. So it's kind of an interesting group of people. I find them not very sincere in their. I'm trying to be very polite here, as you know.
I appreciate it, Service Director Mack, and I think that it's a really important discussion for us to have potentially at the strategic planning session in the new board term.
Okay.
Through a budget process, that because it sounds like what you're suggesting would be either eyes on the ground from a staff perspective, which is resourcing and hiring and creating a department of eyes on the ground, which may or may not fall within the mandate of the regional district, or it's, you know, community groups that, you know, in Whistler, we've got the Association of Whistler Area Residents for the Environment, which was started over 30 years ago. They're constantly monitoring all of these different environmental impacts of different commercial operations. So I think, you know, is that something within our current capacity? Maybe not. Is it now a good time to discuss it? Absolutely. As we go into the next term, I think that there's, you know, it definitely has to be a budget discussion.
Well, and I think we really need to take advantage of cooperating with the different, like Naquatwa, Lillooet, Squamish, all the different groups that are also very concerned about this stuff, right? So we can all work together, and back to the eyes on the ground. They've got eyes on the ground. So if we work together, we can make sure that we're not being sold a bill of goods, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have Sal, then Director DeMare, and then Director Rasmussen.
Just on this topic, BC Timber Sales. Now, first time I've seen it. I'm involved in forestry up in our area for many years now. And they actually do mail-outs to property owners within a certain distance from where their planned logging is. So everybody gets mail-outs. And which is a positive thing. That's the first I've seen of it happening with any logging company. And they're mandated to do that now. And the other piece of it is, if you, I was gonna pull that fire smart piece out and talk to it, or the consent agenda, but their mandate right now is to do tree thinning in the wildlife urban interface area, which is 2 kilometers from communities and buildings and so on and so forth. And the tree thinning is very similar to what was proposed there, and we've got it also in our area now where Interwest is looking at East Gun Lake to do tree thinning, and BC Timber Sales is looking to do the tree thinning in the Gaylord area. So all those mailouts went out on the BC Timber Sales version, but not Interwest, which is a private organization. So it's just interesting where the forest industry is going. They're going to get wood out, 50% of the stock out to the mills, so we keep people working and the forest industry working, plus also contribute to fire smarting in and around communities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, similar to Sal, that there are discussions from companies saying that they need to go in this new direction because they don't have the wood that they've had in the past. But I still think I'm with Director Mack in that we need to be discerning and just keeping an eye on it, and what Sal's working on the ground to like understand what's happening, because it looks good on the outside, like great, we're fire smarting, except how does that look for our on the ground? It might serve one purpose, but maybe not for mule deer, maybe not for other things. So I think it's important, again, like Director Mack was saying, was just continue to build those relationships with our Indigenous and other non-profit, other things, to be able to make sure that they're doing it for the right reasons and that it's working for everything on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate the comments made here, because I think that this really lends itself to strong and good partnerships and relationships with neighboring communities such as Lillooet and Squamish-Lillooet, and there's so many opportunities for connection here that really sincerely takes into account the ecology and our community protection in and around this vast area. So thanks for bringing that up. Tony, you are my last, and then we will move on.
Thank you. I just wanted to share a good news story, which started with a tragedy. Obviously, I've got to be very careful what I say here. I don't want to divulge any personal information, but there was an incident where somebody had a heart attack. The Britannia Beach Fire Department were called out along with the ambulance service. The fire department got there first. CPR, the ambulance showed up. Our fire group and the ambulance personnel worked together, and they worked for probably an hour in bringing this person back to a sort of situation where he could be transported to hospital. He was then put in an ambulance, and they spent 30 minutes stabilizing him before they took him. They took him directly to St. Paul's, and where he went into ICU, and the prognosis was pretty grim. Somehow he has recovered. He and is now home. So that's the really good news part of it. The other thing is that the fire department and the ambulance crew worked really well together. Afterwards, they had a quick debrief, and then they arranged a debrief on the Tuesday evening, which was practice night. And the ambulance guys were saying that they hadn't really encountered such an instance before. it was a learning experience for both groups. And as I say, the net result of all that was a very positive outcome. The other thing that we discovered was that our AEDs in Furry Creek need serious attention, and we are in the process now of sourcing new ones. So again, well, I'll just say that absolute congratulations for the way the ambulance crew conducted themselves, and congratulations to our volunteer fire department for the work that they did, which was amazing. Thank you.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, and I am always so proud of the work that our volunteer fire departments in our unincorporated areas do for our community. It is amazing what they do. So thank you to all of the small fire departments around our region. And continue to be trained and ready to respond, because our communities would not be the same without you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to share with the board and community, a number of us were there, Mayor Herford, Director Pettingill, Director Rainbow, for the opening of the new Squamish Search and Rescue Base on Friday afternoon. This board committed a substantive amount of money, $100,000 through the Southern Area Pilt Fund to make that building a reality. It's been years in the making, 8+ years of planning, advocacy work from an already stretched volunteer group. And I think it was the day after we were there celebrating the opening of that new building. They had 4 calls in 7 hours that they responded to. Unfortunately, one individual lost their life. And so they are, I think, by far the busiest search and rescue team in the province. They had 125 calls last year alone. And it's just, speaking of volunteers, like an incredible group of humans who do that work and dedicate a minimum of 80 hours of volunteer time a year. Often that is above and beyond, or that's the bare minimum of what they do. Plus the coordination that it took to get that building built and the number of folks aligned to make it happen. So just want to say thanks to the board for their support. And it was great to see you there, Director Rainbow, to celebrate together that core piece of infrastructure for our regional community.
Yeah,
And we call
thank
on
you.
all
Thank you.
orders of government to support search and rescue. Yes, because they do it for free, and we couldn't do it, again, we couldn't do it without them. Jackie.
I wanted to let the board know that the first formal emergency toxic drug task force meeting was held on June 23rd. Director Birch Jones attended via Teams, and it was a very good meeting. They elected a chair, who is Gabe Williams from Skatine, and he's had involvement or is involved with First Nations Health Authority. And so they'll have meetings, they'll have a monthly schedule, and they're reporting back to the Stadtliam Chiefs Council. So this is a really important collaborative move forward on that topic.
That's great, thank you. And sad that we have to have that, but glad that we do. With that, let's call a recess. We'll go have lunch, and then we'll come back here in time.
motion to receive
Move to receive the chairs up round table. Moved by Director Herford, second by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Recess, lunch back here at 11 after the meeting. Okay, we are at number 10.1 electoral area directors committee recommendations from the meeting on June the 10th. And we have Alden, hello, talking about civic addressing.
Yes, yeah, pretty straightforward. This is a request for community works funds to be allocated to two different portions of our civic addressing project. The first is specific to Area B, where we're requesting $31,027. And this will be a continuation of that first phase where we're installing signs in Area B. And the second phase is going to be an SLRD wide portion of the project where we're going to be providing signs upon request to property owners who wish to receive new civic addressing signs. And we've allocated the funding based on folio count within the area. This was what we felt was the fairest allocation, and we've removed all the folios in Area B that have already been done through the Area B specific project to reduce the cost to Area B, since Area B has already done a lot of the work themselves. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Just process wise, I thought I saw civic addressing as part of the budget, and I kind of would have thought, oh yeah, we approved this work as part of the budget.
We do have a civic addressing service, but we didn't have taxation funds budgeted to cover these costs, so we've been funding it through, or proposing to fund it through community works funds. But we do have a civic addressing service that there's a budget for it, but this project is not included in the 2026 budget.
Can we move both
Yeah,
at one time?
I just want to check that. Claire, did you want to add something?
Oh, I think I just, through the chair, one clarification point is that the civic addressing, this is specifically related to signs and sign installation rather than the actual just service of providing civic addresses. So that's where the costs outside of the budgeting process are, or cost center are coming forward.
Thank you. Do you want to move it?
Oh, with that as presented.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Director Rasmussen, comments? Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Ben. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Monica Halitsky, Chair Manager for the SLRD. As Chair mentioned, this is the long anticipated proposed new Director's Remuneration Bylaw. And it's being presented for first, second, third readings and adoption. The proposed bylaw establishes changes to SLRD Board Director stipends, indemnities, eligible expenses, all which have been reviewed and considered by the board throughout the current term of office. The key or noteworthy changes are highlighted in the staff report, and staff are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Question? Question? Go ahead. You have two questions.
No, just one question. There's actually one statement. I think, you know, I appreciate all the work that has been done on this. I know that we've been working on this a long time. I always struggle with increases like this because, you know, I think, you know, I get it. Recruitment is tough, and we're coming up into an election time when we're trying to make it so that recruitment is a little bit easier and people can financially afford to maybe give up their jobs or and come and do this. But and I know that it's 91 cents per million assessed value, but I also think it's a cumulative effects on all the 91 cents for all the thousands, you know, that we do. I think taxpayers are having a hard time. I think they're struggling out there with food, gas, and all sorts of everything else. And the remuneration for the board, I am just like, yeah, I struggle with it. And I just kind of want to see what my colleagues think, because I'd be okay to to not have this part. I think that with the area directors and the phone and all that, I think that, you know, I'm definitely in support of that. But it's just this raise at a time when I think that taxpayers are just, again, just really struggling. So just a comment.
Anyone else?
I guess what I would sort of wonder, I take the point, but relatively speaking, these are small increases to avoid the cost of a by-election, or, you know, if we don't even have an acclamation. And, you know, the amount we're looking to save here, you know, could we save that much or better in some of the other hundreds or thousands of budget line items? Yes, and is this the place, you know, if we have really good people that are, you know, compensated such that they can do the job, come and do the job, they can and will, in theory at least, and hopefully in practice, and I think I've seen this in practice and around this table, make a much greater difference from good decisions in those other budget line items. And so I think, are we really, have to be careful, is it a true savings or not? And I feel, you know, I think that Director Rainbow has made some reasonably compelling arguments, didn't quite get me there to go further than this, but I think this is a, you know, a reasonable step, but not an extreme step.
Thank you. Go ahead, Carmen, and then Mike.
Yeah, I think, I think all of our decisions that have a financial implication need to be well reasoned and given appropriate consideration. This process has sort of highlighted where we sit in relative to other places. If that's a useful measure, I don't know that it always is, as we all feel at least that we're our own special situation. But that being, you know, things being challenging for our constituents or people in province or in Canada generally, I think is an important factor. We are seeing a reduction in people that have the ability to volunteer their time for things in community. And I think if we don't get the balance of this just right, then only the people that really can afford to volunteer their time, if we're not compensating enough for it to be seen as something besides volunteerism, then it also starts shrinking that, it continues to put pressure on the shrinking pool of people that might put their name forward for this work. So I think it's almost exactly because of that this is worth not just considering but supporting. And we have heard, I think there's also a values discussion around who these roles are accessible to. So one is that struggling piece, but if we really step back even further, then if we're not compensating elected officials to a reasonable amount, then the folks that can afford to do these jobs because things are tight are likely going to be wealthy and retired. And then we get decisions made for the future, exclusively made by those, and nothing against anyone at this table that might be wealthy and retired. I also aspire one day to be wealthy and retired and perhaps do this work. And if it's the only people that can do it, yeah, exactly. But if it's the only people that can do it and we set a system up where that's the only people that can participate, then we're only going to get that participation. So I think this is well balanced.
And I think it's really, that's well said, thank you. And I take your point. Again, I think that this is a difficult situation, and that's why we didn't go with the initial, this feels like the right move. We asked staff to go away and come back with pretty significant evidence of what other regional districts are paying, what other municipalities are paying. You know, it's not about recruitment, because at the end of the day, this is a completely unqualified role. You do not have any requirements to entry other than, you know, being willing to put your name on a ballot and meet the criteria, the very, very, very low bar that the province sets, which is a bit frightening when you only get angry people putting their hands up and only, you know, so I think that this is, and it's also, I think it puts some, anyways, I don't know what I wanted to say there, but I think that this is evidence-based. It is a step in the right direction. I think it seeks to fill the seats with equity, creating a more diverse board in a fairly diverse region. You know, and it's neat with regional districts that you have this ward system of, you know, representing different areas so that you have that popular, but we could, in theory, have 11 members around this board that all live in Richmond, BC, because you don't have to live in the region to represent the region. So it's, you know, I think it's important to have people that live in your region able to do this role. And it's not something that you do 1 day a month or 2 days a month off the side of your desk. It's it needs to be treated with that. You know, there's some real rigor that's required to do this job. I am sorry that Tony Rainbow is not on this, but we know how he. Oh, there he is. I want Tony Rainbow to have the last word. You're muted, you're muted.
That was it.
I really have nothing more to say. I'm disappointed the way it went. I mean, 4 years ago that I first brought this up. I didn't win the argument, that's fine, you know, you can't win them all. But I'm disappointed that we had to, the approach we took, that we have to be at the median. There are a couple of regional districts that pay considerably more than us, 50,000 plus. I wonder if we called them and said, why do you do that? Why did you go that high? And I bet they had a reason. And I look at this area, and we don't live in one of the cheaper parts of the province. I would bet we don't even live in the sort of an average part of the province in terms of housing costs and things. That might not be true for Lillooet and Area A. It certainly is down through the sea to sky. So this is better than it was, but nowhere near where I think it should be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to staff. I may have missed it, but I believe we had a conversation around providing alternate directors an additional amount of money for preparation for a meeting, like a half day. And I'm just, as I read it, I didn't see it jump out at me. Is that included in the file? I'm forgetting where we landed in that discussion.
So we, I believe there was further discussion regarding that it not be included. And it does specify in the new bylaw that the meeting fees for alternate directors are inclusive of meeting preparation time.
Thank you.
From just to clarity, it's a significant increase in meeting, and that was to reflect meeting time preparation, not instead of making it separate. Thank you.
I was also curious on the alternate directors, why we have the difference in rates for internal meetings versus external appointments. The ones like a meeting 30 hour or 30 minutes or more, and the other one like meetings for 1 hour.
Is this the schedule for the alternate director remuneration meeting fee?
Yeah.
So the meetings identified in subsections 1A, B, and C, those are the kind of larger, the regular board meetings, committee of the whole meetings, NEA, committee meetings. And I believe there was some past analysis, probably over 10 years ago, where it was determined that those meetings are longer and more involvement is required. And so that's why that that time difference is there for those two different timeframes. And the other shorter meetings the meeting fees are the same, but the time span of the length or duration of the meetings is different. So. That's why there's that difference.
Page 111 of your packages look like 111, 112. But I'm happy to leave it as kind of.
So move first, second, and third reading of the bylaw?
Yeah.
So seconder? Did I already get a second round? Yeah. Move it to second. Any comments from anyone?
Make one comment. I thank you for this, and it's really good the way that the future board, some of the things that have made it easier for staff on you know, such as the phone bills and et cetera, that it's going to be easier for the directors in the future to get their reimbursements. Thank you.
Director Hurford, then Director.
I made some statements earlier, and I think those stand. I'll also say that I think this is an important function of a board at this point in time. This is incredibly challenging for a group to, if things are well out of whack, to make a correction mid-term. So for due diligence for the future board at this table, I think it's important that this review has happened, and we talked about the overall amount increase, but the sort of refinement to the system and taking on the lessons of this group, interacting with the current policy that we've been working under, bylaws we've been working under to this point, I think is also a value, and there's efficiencies there. So I'm comfortable that this as sort of aims to address some of those bigger issues you talked about, but also some of these what can feel like smaller pieces, but are actually could be quite impactful to the people doing the work and the administrative burden to administer it as well. So I think we've landed in a good place, and I'm happy to support.
Yeah, I just want to thank staff and the board for the fulsome discussion and many iterations that it has taken to get us here. I think this has been a really thoughtful approach to this work, and I think some of the biggest wins are on the pieces that folks might not really understand, the streamlining of some of the processes on the administrative side, the additional support for childcare where needed and applicable. And I hear the board colleagues on considerations of rate increases and stipends. But I do also support other colleagues' comments on ensuring that these roles are at least paying somewhat close to a minimum wage for the number of hours that we put into them. I too have been having conversations, and I remember Director Rainbow saying this from the start of this conversation, trying to recruit people, especially for the EA director role, is really hard. We know it's really hard in councils as well, and I would say that I think that where we've landed is fair and justifiable. Like the EA director remuneration is now almost akin to what we get in Squamish as a councillor, and we meet every week. And so I think also recognizing the capacity of these roles, the expectation, and being really clear in that definition, everybody will hold these roles differently. And I also think that where we landed is a fair compensation for the amount of work and expectation of these roles. And so that some folks can consider how they might try and reorient their lives to make these roles possible for them.
Okay. We're not recruiting. Our role is to govern right until October 17th. Who comes in behind us or who decides to put their name on the ballot is definitely not up to us. And I don't want people to feel like if they haven't been invited to put their name on the ballot, that they're not welcome. And so I really want to change that language around, I'm trying to find someone to fill my seat because I'm not running again. I feel very uncomfortable with that narrative. You know, when this goes to media and they were watching our meetings, I want everyone in this province to feel as though there is a seat for them here if they feel they can represent their community in a way of honor and integrity and rigor. And so I've heard more times than I can count in the community, well, I would never be able to do it. I couldn't do it. And it's like, yes, you can. Well, I don't have time. Okay, that's a different situation. But saying that I'm not experienced, I'm not a building inspector, I don't understand, construction, those are not criteria that people need to meet. They need, and you can decide what for yourself if you're qualified, but I just want to change that narrative that it's not up to us who puts their name on the ballot. And so I don't want anyone to take that ownership that like, if they haven't found their replacement, then they have to stay. It's not up to anyone in this building to recruit. And it's really an open process. And you don't have to be invited here. So if that makes sense, because I just feel like I don't want people to feel excluded. Tony?
I just wanted to, while listening to the arguments here, back in the 80s, for an MLA, well, let me put it this way. I was asked to run for the provincial legislature. I had teenage boys at the time, mortgage, everything like that. And one of the reasons I didn't do it was because I would have had to take about a 30% cut in pay. Now, since then, the government, and I think they did it wisely, has increased the amount of money they pay to MLAs. So now I can't see any reason why anybody would not be prepared to do it for a financial reason. Now that was I don't know how they came about that, but there were so many people not prepared to give up jobs or to walk away from their business for what was a paltry sum. And that's all I was trying to get at with my argument to increase this, not recruiting, but just to make it more sort of equitable for a greater number of people.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarity. And I think this was a good conversation. I appreciate everyone's input. I never meet people in the community that says we get paid too much. Most people would say that we work very, very hard for our communities and people appreciate it.
Combined with you can't pay me enough to do your work.
This is
I've also
it.
heard that.
Yeah. Lori?
And I have heard that as well. But anyways, I appreciate all the conversation. And again, I think that there's some very good work in this agenda item. I think it's been a long time coming. And I agree that, recruitment is tough. Is compensation the barrier? I don't think that compensation is the barrier to end all, but I do think that, as I think we all look out, and it's in our DNA, in our jobs to look out for the taxpayer and the financial burden that it is. But it's also on us to look after our communities and the areas that we serve. So, yeah, I appreciate all the conversation because, you guys have all made some great points and I'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? This is on first, second, and third reading. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And a motion please to adopt the bylaw as presented. Moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Crompton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Uh, 11.2.
We'll do that tomorrow.
What? You see the other name there? Wow. You coming?
Just run away.
Hello. Needing no introduction, but Ms. Dewar, if you'd like to introduce us.
Yes. Good afternoon, Claire Dewar, General Manager of Planning and Development Services. We are here to speak to 11.2, and with me we have Lisa Bedrini, Senior Planner at the SLRD.
Welcome. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. I'm here today to introduce a amendment bylaw to the Development Application Information Fees and Notification Procedures bylaw, number 1936. So, this bylaw is recommending a series of minor and more substantive amendments, most of which are being proposed as a means of aligning the bylaw with commitments made in the Truth and Reconciliation Guide, and thus creating opportunities for more equitable processes. Several local governments in BC have updated their fees and charges bylaws to reflect reconciliation efforts, including the City of Vancouver, Regional District of Nanaimo, the Capital Regional District, the Comox Valley Regional District, and Metro. So while we're not the first, we're definitely at the forefront in introducing a specific type of amendment that advances reconciliation. So the amendments consist of adding enhanced detail on what has always been a requirement under the Heritage Conservation Act in terms of the type of information that applicants would provide to show staff that they have been that they are aligning their application with the Heritage Conservation Act. So just to reiterate, it's nothing new, it's just some more detail on what would be asked for at the time of application. Our main highlight is offering a fee exemption for development application fees to facilitate the development of fee simple lands owned by First Nations, to facilitate non-market housing or a traditional cultural activity, such as a location for a sweat lodge or a gathering space. We've also included some language in the bylaw to enable the general manager to enter into a cost recovery agreement for complex development proposals. This doesn't have anything to do with the Truth and Reconciliation, but it's just a means for the for staff to help advance applications where we might not have the capacity in-house. We would be able to hire external professionals, and through the agreement, if the applicant agrees, all the costs would be 100% covered by the developer. So I'm bringing this forward today for consideration of first and second reading. And although it's an administrative bylaw and regularly these types of bylaws would not be referred out, I am making the recommendation that it be referred out to regional First Nations to give them an opportunity to collaborate on the suggested changes and maybe to recommend further changes. And as you know, the board has asked planning staff to look into making some amendments to our referral practices. That will be coming up at an upcoming board meeting under a different report. We're going to add some language to our planning procedures policy to allow an extended timeline. We're thinking rather than 30 days, probably 60 to 90 days. So on that note, I would like to be able to give First Nations on this referral an extended timeline. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. Thanks for the work. Reading through the bylaw, and I appreciate this may be out of the scope from the reconciliation perspective, but with affordable housing being such a great need across the region, I'm curious why we're singling out First Nations non-market housing and not just waiving fees for all 100% non-market buildings.
Yeah, so thank you through the chair. Currently, our fees bylaw provides an exemption of 50% for affordable housing projects. And that wasn't in the scope of this specific work, and that could be addressed as part of future bylaw or addressed as part of this bylaw amendment process. The for both the First Nations affordable housing projects or other affordable housing projects, there is the requirement for the housing agreement, so that is consistent for both settings.
Thank you. And then just in the language, it says the primary purpose of the use or development is non-market housing subject to a housing agreement and or traditional cultural activity. Is that like 50% or more? Is it like, how do we define the majority of the use? Like if they're proposing a mixed use building, for example, that would have commercial on the bottom floor.
So in the SLRD context, we have very few locations that would meet that mixed use ability within our regional growth strategy. We have in the context of a more recent application, it has been specifically to the housing component of, so it's based on the housing component, not the other commercial components.
Thank you.
Okay, a question, like I noticed under the financial implications, we really don't know what those are gonna be. Is there any way to gauge how much we have received, like in the past year at all?
Yes, so thank you through the chair. We have received, so specific to say like affordable housing projects that have been led by First Nations. We have received one to date ever in the SLRD context. There is one that is working through pre-application meetings at present. And those processes, we're talking under $5,000 per application. Typically, if we're looking at development permit applications, those fees are in the range of $150 to $500. We haven't had the opportunity or need to waive those as of present.
Is there any future talks about, like, is it in the works? Like, I'm concerned about like churches or nonprofits or seniors, or are we just identifying First Nations in this at this point?
So thank you through the chair. These particular amendments are really looking at implementing the guide and focus on truth and reconciliation. And thus they are specific to First Nations projects specific around affordable housing or cultural works. And we haven't thought of expanding out the scope. The intention here around affordable housing and truth and reconciliation is really tying in with the board's strategic priorities on these areas.
Okay, so, and I'm understanding that any money that we would forego would be made up by contractors, or would it be made up by constituents? Like, are we kind of shifting that? I mean, ultimately, it's the same thing, right? Because the contractors, that's just gonna flow down to the constituents anyway. So, but basically that's where we're looking, right? Because I'm really concerned about having a two-tiered system for First Nations and non-First Nations. And I think that we're creating that where, I'm really protective of our entire communities and where it leads to. So sometimes I think that truth and reconciliation means different things to all of us. It means, and I mean all of us, not all of us at the table, but all of us province-wide. And I just wonder that creating, like I said, a two-tiered system is not gonna be the path that we're hoping to get to. So,
Yes, thank you through the chair. I mean, to the previous comment around, is there an opportunity to look at affordable, reducing application fee for all affordable housing projects? That is at the discretion of the board, and staff would welcome direction on that particular piece. And then specifically around the truth and reconciliation amendments that are being proposed here, really, we are looking at First Nations as a government that are working through an application process, and how do we look to that process as being different than other property owner that's coming forward.
Thank you. Just to build a little bit on what Director Hoffel is saying. Could you explain a little bit more, because just the reference to the guide, the Truth and Reconciliation Guide, and I've read it. What is the intent of this dropping of the fees? What specifically for reconciliation is it trying to move forward or to take away as a area? How is it how will it actually make that reconciliation move forward? Can you explain that piece to me?
Sure, I can. Well, offering a fee exemption, so specifically you're talking.
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, helps with resource burden when it comes to First Nations plans for lands that are fee simple and owned by the nation. I can think of a couple of examples where the Lillooet Nation, for example, has recently purchased or was given the outdoor school up the Pemberton Meadows Valley, and I know they've been tossing around different ideas on what they want to do there. Maybe one being, you know, some traditional cultural activities. To me, I guess I find it a bit difficult for us to ask them to pay application fees for that type of a use. It's not going to raise any money for them. It's you know, it's basically just a way for them to deepen and strengthen their ties to their traditions and their culture. So it's advancing reconciliation in a way that you're just providing a very equitable process where we're not expecting them to pay for development application fees should they need an application to pursue that type of a use. We're talking about, like, as Claire already mentioned, maybe $150 to maybe $5,000. So that's about in the range of money that we would be forfeiting. Is that the right word? Forfeiting by not collecting that fee. And so it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but in terms of the respect it pays, or the just the acknowledgement of the fact that the land, you know, has never been ceded, and the use that they may want to take on that land. It just, to me, it's I'm not really sure what the wording would be in the guide. Maybe on how that helps advance the commitments made in the guide. But yeah, I just definitely think about lowering the resource burden for First Nations.
Right, okay. So just to give some profit or some background, definitely, I've been working with First Nations for 25 years. So Enkaklama, Squamish, Shatliam, doing a lot of on the ground work to move forward reconciliation, fully knowing that at a provincial and federal level, that needs to happen. They need to be responsible for what they need to do to move forward with the work where there's no treaty and be able to do that. That is not that's not the work that I've been doing. I do work on the ground because that's not my role. So as another government level, I am conscientious of the fact that it's important for us to engage in reconciliation. I think it's incredibly important to to have a plan, to be able to fulfill that plan. But there's a lot of gray area when it comes to, are we actually moving forward on a reconciliation action that is tied to the responsibility of the government to do their job? So I'm at one hand, part of me is very supportive of that burden because I see it a lot. But I also understand what Director Hopful is bringing forward with a two-tiered system that continues to divide our country and our communities in a way that when we work hard with relationships, it starts to break them down. So money is the hard part, and it always is when it comes to projects and because we have this Indian Act that creates these silos, and it's not something we can control. So then I always ask myself, well, okay, is this going to be part of the work that we can do on the ground, that as at our level of government, that is something that we can do to continue, or will it create more problems in the good work that we're doing on the ground? And so this one I'm not too sure about, even though I really want to say yes. But I'm just a little bit concerned that you don't get to pay a fee and you get to pay a fee. I'm concerned about that, but I'm also understanding that a lot of these rules that have been placed on is a colonial thing, right? So, yes, so go ahead, Clark. Cut me off, be better.
Thank you. So through the chair, it may be helpful to separate out the affordable housing component. And we have seen in the SLRD context, First Nations are leading our affordable housing development. Those are the applications that are coming forward. So we actually have been, these applications have been receiving the 50% fee reduction that's available to the whole development community. It just happens that First Nations are the ones who are seeking out and the opportunities to build affordable housing in the SRD specific context. So I think that's helpful. To Director Stoner's comment before, there could be an opportunity to expand that out to all affordable housing projects. And we do see that in other organizations. If that's the desire of the board, we want to see affordable housing get built, and that is, supporting both truth and reconciliation and First Nations being able to be the leaders in that space, and it also is supporting our other strategic board priorities around affordable housing. The other component of this fee waiver is looking at traditional cultural activity and supporting that through fee waivers. We're talking about, language revitalization, we're talking about connecting to the land, and we don't necessarily have those, this is the new space. I will say that's a new space for us to understand as planning. We are starting to have conversations with our neighboring First Nations on these projects, and it would be helpful for staff to have tools to be able to support those processes better. And that's what this fee exemption would be providing. And it perhaps connects in with some other items on this board where we're looking at other grants as ways of supporting these projects. Fees are also a way we can support these projects. I just wanted to support what Ms. Pedrini was saying.
when she said, I don't think I can actually articulate it better than you did really well. I will just want to also add that one of the things we said when we were talking about the guide, we were developing what guide, we were all sitting at the table is what can we control? And where can we make changes where we can control it? And when the guide was endorsed, the board directed staff to come up with a plan and what can be done, what are the small things can be done, what are the long-term 25 years, and everything in between. Some of that work is being done. Staff have been empowered to take training, talk to organizations, look what other organizations do, talk to First Nations on whose territory we operate, and come up with ideas. And this is one of those ideas that has precedence and is a very small amount of impact when it comes to us financially. And it recognizes First Nations as a level of government and not a nonprofit community group. It also leans towards our conversation that we have internally with staff that's recognized in the guide about legal pluralism, or more specifically, that what can we control? And we have our 3 lanes. We have our sticky lane, our gray lane, and our action lane. Our sticky lane is we are tied. It is legislated by the government. We cannot do anything. And that's when we advocate, if we feel that change is needed. The gray zone is when, well, it looks like we can actually follow through with some while also advocating. A good example of that is closed meetings and recognizing First Nations as a government in closed meetings prior to legislation being changed, and legislation was changed as a result of advocacy specifically. And I want to commend Ms. Belsham here for her action in that. The other one is the action lane, and that's what this represents. What can we do now? What do we control? And that's where these, I know they seem small, these small moments make big impact. What we think might be minimal may be a big impact. When you are a nation with only having just had permission to purchase fee simple land 2 years ago, prior to that, the Indian Act did not allow for it. This is a wall that we think is normal, that they're facing for the first time, some of them, having to apply for fees on territory in which they feel is unceded, and what the guide speaks towards. So this is for us, for staff, we asked them what they could come forward with, and this is one of those things. I did want to recognize on our table is the guide for working in a good way and some of the commitments, and that this is what staff also have on their boards when they're working together. That, and then most importantly, what are priorities above the strategic priority.
Jack, go ahead.
I'm going to move the recommendations and speak to it if there's secondary.
Have it seconded, but I'll go to, sorry. Was yours a question or a comment? Okay, can I come back to you? Or, okay, question, Director Demare, and then we'll.
For staff. Yes, let's talk about the cultural stuff first. Is there, to the concept of on the cultural and the housing, we've got some equivalency on the housing that we could do the same thing for. What for some nonprofit organizations could we do something for them similar to what that cultural and heritage version of what you have in here, so that we're doing the same for our community as we're doing with the First Nations community, to get that evenness that we know that we should be driving for. So for me, I would like to see a report on that also. I'm in support of this, but we need to make sure that we're doing it for our communities also, especially our nonprofit organizations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is yours a question?
Question and follow-up.
Okay.
In follow-up to Director Demare's comments, I am curious if we have mechanisms where nonprofits are able to apply for reduced rates for things, maybe not specifically for fees. I feel like the difference here might be that we're talking about a First Nation government that wasn't necessarily a nonprofit. I'm just wondering if you can speak to like that intersection between the nonprofit, First Nation government entity and application for fees and fee waivers.
Thank you. So through the chair, I am, an example is not coming forward to me of where a nonprofit has
Heritage.
heritage for a development application, not
Yeah.
building permit. Okay. So there's heritage.
I think it's 30% or something.
Yes, so no, but previous examples of a nonprofit receiving for heritage. Okay. This would, yeah, specifically around other examples that it would often intersects with affordable housing. And we don't, I would say have not been a lot of examples of nonprofits coming forward with it to seek out development applications. And so there hasn't been, it hasn't maybe come forward in a fee sense very often. I guess the distinction that staff are making here is around a government applying for a project, recognizing First Nations governments here as distinct from nonprofit organizations.
My other question was just if the board was interested in extending the waiver to all non-market housing, is that something that we should do in advance of giving 3 readings and refer this back to staff, or what would the preferred process be there?
I would recommend having that as a separate project and report to come in.
No. Okay, I have questions. Chris, then Lori.
Comments?
Mine's a comment.
Okay. Did you still want to put the motion on the floor for first, second, and third? Or no, first and second? Then referral. Okay,
We have a seconder?
you were gonna second it.
Yeah, I can second.
Yeah. Comment speaking to it, and then I'll go to my comment list.
Yeah, I feel like this is a natural follow through to all of the public commitments we've made as an organization, and if we don't do it, I'd be asking myself, well, what are those public statements that we've made? I think reconciliation requires an economic component. This is part of that, and I think the most important thing for me anyway is that we are talking about how we address other governments, and they are not nonprofit organizations, and they're not the same as, nor should they be treated similar to a nonprofit organization. They are a government, and I think this makes perfect sense. I think we should move forward with it quickly, and then hopefully have our staff come back with other opportunities on how we can move forward in ways that treat these organizations as the governments that they are. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. I have Director Pettengill, Director Hopple, Director Herford, and Donner.
Yeah, happy to support this. I thank staff for the work on this, just listening to some of the conversation in the room. You know, there may be rationale to look at fees and so on for other entities, whether it's non-for-profits and so on. For me, I see that as a separate discussion, and I think you know, I am sort of wondering if we maybe need to do a bit more to review the guide. I appreciate it's here and often it's attached to reports, but I think for me, there is a distinction in that, one, we're talking about governments here, but we've also made, and we've heard about the commitments we've made, and it's to address colonialism, which is you know, generations of quite frankly harm that has been done, that we have made a commitment to address, that is very unique and I may require some unique attention and so on. And I think we're working consistent with the guide. Again, if there are other groups for other reasons that we want to, you know, we want to drive affordable housing and so on, great, let's have those discussions. But I'm really hesitant about putting them in the same bucket as this discussion. I think they are different discussions, even if sometimes they have the same outcomes.
Thank you. I appreciate all the conversation. I want to clarify something is I don't think, and I don't think anybody at this table thinks that, you know, lumping nonprofits together with First Nations is what we're talking about. We all recognize that First Nations are governments, but I think the distinction is, again, that two-tiered level of what we're doing here. So, you know, when I think of Truth and Reconciliation, I went to Indigenous Day last weekend, and you know, it was really great. We had lunch, and you know, there's lots of conversation around there, and lots of speeches, lots of people talking. And after, you know, I was sitting there with one of the past chiefs, and we were talking about water and just ongoing projects that we can work together on. And to me, those are so important. That's the truth and reconciliation that I look for, is that relationship. It's working together in partnerships, and whether that be water or health or emergency services, that is what, you know, we should be concentrating on. And I just feel that I can't support this because, to me, this does more harm than good for the betterment of all of our constituents. So, you know, I think that we just have to be very careful on what we're doing when it comes to truth and reconciliation, because again, it does mean something different to all of us, and how we get there. And I know that there is an economic piece to that too, but you know, all communities can't afford to give that economic piece as well. And is that right when the constituents are making up that economic piece? So again, you know, I go to, I'm not going to support this, but only because it's very important to me that when we do truth and reconciliation, that we make it good for everybody, that we make it good for our province, our people, and that we are all on a shared goal. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Armand?
Thank you. I think this is an appropriate path forward, and as others have said, I think this is an extension of what we've been this is us following through on what we've committed to. And as we recognize and truly the other order of government that that First Nations represent, it's different and it's new, and there are pieces that need to change to make this smoother and clarify things perhaps from other orders of government. But this is about doing what we can here, and I don't think that the impact of this is both not occurring from a financial perspective as a make or break on projects, nor is it providing this an undue burden onto the organization. So I think that, but I do think it's important that we move forward with this. It makes good sense, and it's us following through on earlier commitments that we've made. And I do think that this is for the betterment of the entire region, in that it's a responsible step forward.
Thank you. And Jen?
Thank you, through the chair. I will be supporting the motion on the floor and appreciate the discussion and the conversation that's been had. I think it's a really important one as we think about how we move our guide into action and into reality. And I think the question of like whose responsibility is it to shoulder the costs of reconciliation is very real, and what do those costs look like? I think the guide speaks that a little bit in terms of like, what is our role as a local government? I know many folks are struggling with this, given the system that we have. And I think the burden and the opportunities are ever more present in the work that we do. If this was a fee waiver for all development permit application or development applications that came forward from First Nations, I wouldn't be supporting it. I think the nuance is in the detail as presented. I will follow up with a motion to direct staff to review a waiver for all affordable housing and non-market housing. That's a priority of our board, has been for a long time. It's a need across our communities. And so I see alignment there with broader need. And then the traditional cultural activity piece, I think is really specific to, it feels weird, just like, I don't have a better way of saying it, to charge development fees to a First Nations government to try and do cultural traditional activity on land that is unceded. Granted, it is a fee simple ownership model that they are now working under, but there's a piece there that just feels very awkward to me. That doesn't have a huge cost burden for our taxpayers, but I think shows an attempt and an intent to dismantle some of the systems that we've created that put up barriers to folks just returning to the land and practicing their culture. And so that's the piece that I am really supportive of in here. But here, my colleagues' concerns around, is this deepening divisions that we know are happening in neighborhoods and in community versus actually making impactful change on the way that we do our work that is really just a form of streamlining the processes that we have that I think many people ask us to do. So that's why I'll support the motion on the work.
I'm really grateful for the discussion as well, and I will be supporting the motion. Understanding the differences, like, or at least the information with, and the things that I've said about two-tiered and that can cause division, but I think hearing all of you and hearing and understanding how I've tried to work on that reconciliation piece, which is what can you control? And that I don't think it has anything to do with the financial piece because it is such a small piece of the pie. It's more just what are we trying to do that shows that we're working in a good way towards reconciliation. So yeah, thanks for everybody's input on that, and I appreciate the discussion.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And a follow-up motion?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that staff be directed to bring back a report to the board that considers fee waivers for all non-market housing.
A second.
Okay, and discussion? Would you like to speak to the motion? I think you've supported it. I think that's good. Okay, Chris?
Yeah, just, I will support this, in general, it's something worth considering. I do wanna just add one thought. Part of the reason for the guide and the work we've been doing is I think a recognition that we're not all starting from the same place. So there is still a lot of learning, as a whole community to do about reconciliation and so on. And so there can be, as we're doing that learning, some discomfort. It feels like, oh, well, those folks are getting something, why aren't I getting something too? It seems unfair, but we're forgetting the fact that we're not all starting from the same place and we're trying to, it's not always simple to figure out, but we're trying to sort of bring everyone up so that we can all be at a place and that's a belief I think that I have, that when we do that, when we are all sort of benefiting and in a good place, it's just better for all of us, and that's I think what we're trying to do, and it means different things in different circumstances. Yeah.
I'm supporting the motion. I think we've sort of discovered this policy gap, in my opinion, with the previous discussion. This discussion for me is not about equalizing those two things. This is about delivering barriers and delivering affordable housing wherever possible, just getting out of that way and having a bit of skin in the game. If these fees if expenses incurred by the organization in processing them that we're not recouping through fees, I'm happy to support in have some skin in the game for this organization to support affordable housing. So it makes good sense to me, and I do see them, even though we've stumbled upon this in the same from that perspective, I really see this as a good housing policy, which is not where this conversation started.
Okay. I'm gonna call the question. Yeah, you did. Okay. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if, what I mentioned before about nonprofit organizations, if we could get a summary of what opportunities they have to lower some of the costs when they're looking at infrastructure, building infrastructure. I've mentioned one already, which is the heritage. There are opportunities there. And the amount, what percent discount they get on their building permits, et cetera.
Yes, thank you through the chair to clarify, this isn't to do with building permit application fees, this is development application fees, so it would be different.
Yeah, it'd be the same thing. We got lots of nonprofit organizations in the SLRD.
Maybe we can take that away and come back, like, let's take that offline. So that, because that sounds like a bigger scope of work. That might be considered at a budget process. Rather than a tack on, like this. This was. Yeah. Fun.
This is speaking to do that two-tier system.
Okay.
I think it's important.
It's not part of the motion, this was a post-motion comment. If you want to make a separate and distinct motion. And have it seconded and then speak to it, I think that's the process that we would have to go through for this to. Be added to the work plan. Are you seconding it?
Well, I was gonna suggest to my colleague that I would welcome supporting this going to strategic planning and figuring out where this fits in all the things we want to tackle.
Yeah. Let's take a 5-minute recess. You can down there. Moving on. 11.3. We are talking about 14,988 Squamish Valley Road. And this time. Yeah. Sorry, I have to take this. Russell, over to you.
Clear.
Hello?
Or Anna's gonna speak to this.
Okay, got it. Through the chair, my name is Anna Koturniak, planner analyst with the SLRD. So this application previously received first reading and was referred to a number of agencies, including provincial ministries and Squamish Nations. However, staff did not receive any comments or concerns regarding this proposal. As a reminder, the applicant is seeking a site-specific zoning amendment to permit a bed and breakfast use within an existing single-family dwelling on an agricultural property in the Squamish Valley. This property does have farm status. If permitted, the bed and breakfast would be subject to a number of restrictions in the zoning bylaw, including requirements that the operator resides on the property and a maximum of 4 guest bedrooms are used. An official community plan amendment is not required. The proposal is consistent with the OCP policies that support agritourism and economic diversification. And so the recommendation before the board is to give second reading to the zoning amendment bylaw and direct staff to schedule and advertise a public hearing. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from anybody? Director Rainbow?
You're on mute.
No, thank you, Director Mack. No, I'm just trying to reboot my other computers to look at the agenda. But I'm with you.
Okay, so you don't have anything to add to this 11.3?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'll call a question. Oh, you're moving, yeah, that's a good thing. Moved and seconded.
Schedule and advertise a public hearing.
Okay. Call a question, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Now, is that the first that did we do both that's together?
I have both being passed at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hold on.
Awesome. Sorry, when my 12-year-old calls me before the school day is ended, I have to answer.
Okay, we're off to 11.4.
Here we go. Security issuing bylaw.
Right, good afternoon, Suzanne France, Director of Finance. And before you is a security issuing bylaws requested by the District of Squamish through their municipal council resolution. I'll just open it up for any questions.
Yeah. Any questions? Not seeing any. Who would like to move this? Moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Mayor. Comments? Go ahead.
Just briefly, thanks in advance for our colleagues for letting us borrow all the money in order to build our Park C dike, expand the cemetery, and build the PR 20 Peninsula Main Arterial Road. Very important core projects that we need to do in order to keep our community safe and working.
Awesome. Yeah.
I was considering voting against this. But I just want
And now
to,
you're
Flood
compelled
infrastructure.
because of this in-
I just want to say what a strange process this is. I've always thought it's a strange process. So I will be enthusiastically voting in favor.
Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
And then move in adoption.
Yeah. Moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Crompton. All in favor, any opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Sophie report. Sorry, I'm going by my weird, that's a weird spot. Okay, CEO verbal, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Heather Walker, SLRD. Couple of updates for you. First, BC Hydro payment in lieu of taxes policy. I wanted to give an update to everyone that that is delayed. The province has said that we would be expecting updates now early in the new year when it comes to PILT funding. So that's delayed updates to the policy, not a bad thing. We are also, as directed by the policy committee and the board, working with meetings with Northern Statlium to discuss PILT. And that's my update. If you were wondering, where is that? That's where it is.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
Well, I think I sort of brought this up informally, but just this seems to be a very something that a lot of people have interest in and so on. So just before it comes, I want to make sure that it comes back to the right place, whether it needs a board touch point before we consider it going to the policy committee, or whether it goes directly to the policy committee in the new year when this is done. And for me, that was maybe a question worth having at the board.
Thank you. And if I was to put in from a staff perspective, this is probably much meatier than what anticipated, and it going to the board and circumnavigating the policy committee, partly because of the timing of policy committee meetings, but also because, as you said, it's a very meaty discussion. The board could consider asking for it to be reviewed here.
Would you like me to make that motion then, or?
I don't think so. Let's
Chair can-
continue,
Okay.
yeah, continue.
So no, it stays no discussion of the board. Okay, and then Place Glacier outburst flood risk, as you know, we are in EOC for Place Glacier. We're looking at the rise of the water, and it's likely shortly where this evacuation alert may turn to evacuation orders. Keeping in mind, this is all to make sure everyone's safe. And when it does, we hope that it does erupt soon. It erupts the wrong word, crack a little, and the water starts seeping out shortly. The longer it rises without it, the more impact it has on the flooding. And just an update from that, so definitely sign up for the newsletters, sign up for Buoyant, and the board here will be updated when new information comes. Paradise Valley Bailey Bridge, sorry, do I have any questions on that?
Can I ask one question? Yeah, on Place Glacier?
Yeah.
Where are we at meter wise now?
Was it 27.3? Director or General Manager Phillips?
Yeah, thank you very much.
But it changed in the last 2 hours.
Yeah, the level that we're monitoring is really, we have 2 years comparison, so we have 2025 and 2024. We know that it is higher than the 2025 outburst rate, and is still below the 2024. But it is slowly increasing, and the shape of the lake and the dynamics of the lake continue to change. So the depth and volume, water temperature, there's many considerations, but we are getting closer to that risk level that was experienced in 2025, for sure.
So there's no way to help that thing, because when it gets to how many meters when it comes over? Do you figure like 30 meters? At 30 meters it's coming over, or?
The chair, I'm certainly not an expert, but it is about it's about the volume of the lake and the pressure of the lake,
Yeah.
and that it will actually start to float and then create a conduit by which it will outburst out. So it's yeah. So we are certainly getting close to a high level risk period that it could be an outburst in the future.
And then once the level goes back down to a certain level, then the flow stops. Is that correct?
My understanding through the chair is that once the outburst occurs, we will be hopefully in the clear until the following year.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, next is Paradise Valley Bridge. So as you've in previous reports, inspection of the Paradise Valley Bailey Bridge has identified significant deterioration of the timber abutments, requiring urgent repair of the bridge in this year. District of Squamish will retain a bridge engineering consultant to design the repairs and is working collaboratively with the SLRD to assess and mitigate impacts to residents, commercial operators, emergency services during this construction. Some access disruptions are anticipated. The District of Squamish is evaluating design and construction approaches to minimize those closures. Reducing impacts to community access and emergency services is a key consideration. The construction is targeted for August to October of this year. The District of Squamish has set up a project page for information where residents can subscribe to email updates. Residents from anywhere can subscribe to email updates. The SLRD is also in the process of setting up a web page for this project to support the information that District of Squamish is sharing.
Tony.
No, sorry.
Okay.
Heather just answered my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Great. Next, on June 20th, this past Saturday, staff and elected officials at this table attended a town hall in Seton Portage. And just a quick update on the activities there. We had in attendance Fire Service Manager Bill Stoner, Director of Communication Patricia Westerholm. We have the General Manager of Protective and Emergency Services Mark Phillips, the Deputy Director of Finance Colin Hodgins, and the General Manager of Infrastructure and Environmental Services, Omar Bat, all in attendance. The presentations were addressing the alternative area, oh my God, the AAP.
That's right, approval.
Thank you, internal approval, I'm trying to go fast, and I need to slow. The AAP was addressing that, and specifically, we are at a maximum requisition rate of 33,000, and the overall operations for this service is 78,000, currently being subsidized through PILT and other funding. So the AAP is to increase the maximum to $65,000. That's not saying we're going to requisition $65,000 next year. It's really about having a maximum requisition ceiling where we can move around and live it. So that was about information on that process following a survey that went out to residents. Just to answer questions regarding that, Colin, the Deputy Director of Finance, did a great presentation on overall taxation. Bill Stoner talked about fire services and the delivery of fire services and the fire services agreement. Omar Butt was there to talk about the construction of the building and the renovation that's happening at Seton Fire Hall. Director Phillips was there and Patricia Westerholm was there. Overall, looking at how this is being delivered into community, how's the communication and our connection with community and getting those answers to questions that they have. We were able to answer many of the questions on site. Any of the questions that came up that we weren't able to answer, I really commend staff. When they didn't know, they said they didn't know, and we would get back to them. And there is a page that's going to be dedicated to those, summarizing those questions and getting the answers. Encouraging everyone to sign up for the newsletter, because that is where a lot of communication comes from. And of course, Voyant Alert when it comes to critical fire issues. And that is everything. If you have any questions, let me know. I know that Director Herford was there, and thank you for attending, and also to Director Birch Jones, who isn't here today, and thank you for attending.
Go ahead.
Just a simple question. How many properties pay into that tax service?
Off the top of my head is 225 portfolios, but how about we find out, confirm that for you, probably before the end of the day.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with anything else? Go ahead.
Just to the chair, the CEO, Paul, was this the place that you were gonna have the 40,000, the safety?
Yeah, the 40,000 feet.
Thank you.
$40,000? No. Yes, thank you.
40,000.
Thank you for that. I want to commend staff. One of the things, and I want to thank the District of Squamish. One of the things we did was adopt a safety plan, and the District of Squamish shared theirs with us. And it's about when there's an event, whether it be just these meetings here today, if there's disruption or a safety issue, or when there's an event out in the community, what is our plan? How do we identify the level of safety that we need or protection we need? How do we identify what might come up and what is our response? And so that was done. It's about a 3 or 4 page document. We can share it with the board. One of the things we're doing from overall safety when it comes to this board and other meetings like that is that document now is going to be going in front of the Occupational Health and Safety Committee that is part of the SLRD, and they're reviewing it. One of the recommendations we have is we're going to make an overarching safety analysis of board meetings in this room, what our responses are and what our triggers are. So that's the plan right now. Realizing it is 30 days since the last meeting, it'll probably be in front of us in July or September, I would guess.
Any other questions? Oh, Arvin, you had a question.
Oh, just, no, I guess I'll move for seat. I can make, I realize I'm pretty on this, so I'll move for seat. I'll make it comment.
Second by Director Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was able to attend on Saturday, and it was great to spend some time both with SLRD staff and the members of the community there. I learned a lot about the area, and I think these are just so valuable to communities when we do them. I know it takes a lot of resources to do that, but the amount of conversations that were had, both on the very important subject, we were there to discuss, but other things as well. Community, you know, when you're engaging with the community, you're engaging with the community, even if you set out to engage on a specific piece. And I just want to commend the staff for their work in preparation for and on the day. I think it was a well-run event and really valuable both for the community members and for our organization. So thank you to everybody.
About the number of photos.
What?
That's how fast we are. I was off. It's 102. Yeah, this is what I was like, let me check.
Thank you.
All in favor of receiving the report? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on. 12.2, a request for decision regarding the SLRD 2025 Statement of Financial Information. Following here, Mr. Hodgins. Okay, there's no K.
No, what, sorry?
There's no K.
No.
People up in
Hodgkins, yeah, I'm very used to it. It's Hodgins, but I respond to either, so.
You don't have to.
Yeah, Colin Hodgins, Deputy Director of Finance. This is a request for decision to approve the 2025 Statements of Financial Information. These are a public disclosure report required under the Financial Information Act, and they highlight staff salaries over 75,000 and payments for grants, contributions, and to suppliers over 25,000. There's other information that is required, but is included in our annual financial statements, which you've already seen a number of times. So, and are available on our website for anyone listening. I'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Nope. We see these every year. Move approval. And seconded by Director Mack. Comment? Go ahead.
Just want to, I appreciate all the work, and I'm still always uncomfortable, especially at a $75,000 threshold, identifying people buying loans are not elected or political positions, and I can understand providing transparency around roles or that sort of thing, but just it feels like an unnecessary invasion of people's privacy that doesn't really gain much in terms of transparency, or we can speak in terms of roles and so on, and so that always makes me uncomfortable. But, other than that, I appreciate the work.
Great. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. You. An RFD regarding the Braylorn Water Emergency Capital Repair Funding.
I at this point as well. This is just a request to allocate funding from the Braylorn Water Capital Reserves to offset some capital repair work that we had to do to replace the pump at the Braylorn water system. This was obviously not included in the budget. That was an emergency repair that was required, and we do have significant. There's $208,000 in the capital reserve at the moment, so enough to cover it. So we just requesting that this be approved, and then we'll bring back a amendment to the financial plan at a later date or to the budget.
With that,
I got a couple of questions. One was it was a great idea to use Goldbridge water to service the Braylorn. And I presume that it can work both ways now. When the system goes down in Goldbridge to use the Braylorn water. So that they're treated water, they don't have to go into boil water. The extra cost to truck it was $21,080. Is there enough funding in the budget to take care of that?
In terms of the budget, it's obviously, we didn't anticipate that cost in our ongoing maintenance for 2026, but our plan is to include that in the service cost for 2026 and address it via the 2027 budget. And if there's a deficit, we'll address it via deficit carry forward.
So that was the trucking cost.
Yeah, 21,080 was the trucking cost, so we aren't requesting any funds to be transferred to offset those costs at this time, but you'll see the impact of those costs in the 2027 budget.
Okay, just curious, the both Goldbridge and Braylorn have in their bylaws, their water service bylaws, that bulk water purchase rate is $1.50 per cubic meter. Was that included in that $21,000?
We did not, no, we did not bill ourselves. Like you're saying, send a bill from Goldbridge to Braylor, we did not do that.
So okay, thank you. So I'll move the motion as presented.
Okay, and seconded by Director Mack. Any comments?
Just a quick clarification, I heard my colleague assert that water went one way, it could go the other way if we needed to. Is that a safe assumption or is that accurate?
It could, Goldbridge has a backup system, it is the creek, it's not potable, so you would have to go and boil water, but I think that would be the initial preference versus having to haul. It was very expensive to haul water back and forth. And we will look at what we can do for Braylor for backup as well.
Okay, you want to make a comment? Okay, all in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. You. A protective services or protective and emergency services support vehicle funding. Over to you.
I'll leave this one again. This is a request for funding for a vehicle purchase for the Protective Services Department. This was discussed at the last meeting and we provided some reserve balance figures to the board to kind of discuss potential funding options and bringing back an actual allocation, recommended allocation of funds to proceed with this purchase in 2026. The breakdown that we provided is some 23,000 from each of 23,250 from each of the three build reserves, Area A, Area B, and the Southern Area D, and 12,000 from Area C amenity funds. Yeah, that would cover the purchase and the ongoing operational costs for 2020 for the remainder of 2026, and any further costs for 2027 or later would be included in the budget discussion for those years.
Move that.
Before we get to a motion, I want to allow the process question, Director Rasmussen.
Can you just remind me, I thought that these same numbers were presented at the May meeting.
This was not presented as a request for decision in May. That was the last, or June. Make sure that's the right month. And it had been recommended to us to bring the report and that these numbers may have been a potential suggested allocation, but there was no actual resolution passed to allocate the funds. So we're now just bringing it back as a actual request to have those funds allocated.
Oh, okay. Okay, I had a different recollection. I thought it was that we were looking at different funding options for this meeting.
But I think we wanted to understand what the reserve balances would be if we took these amounts.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And that's now been confirmed. Seconding it.
Seconded.
Okay, so moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Mack.
I can't support this.
Okay.
I'd rather see it go to the tax service next year.
Okay. You want to speak further?
I can't support it.
Okay, you don't have to.
No.
Go ahead.
Can I ask again, and I think I asked this last month too, is there nothing in our vehicle reserve that we can put into this as well to lessen the impact on these areas? Because it said that in the report that when the vehicle is not in use, that staff would have the access to the vehicle. So is there not some other breakdown?
Our vehicle replacement reserve is specific for the vehicles that we have, and I believe a few of them are up for replacement in a year or two, so pulling from that fund now to fund this would just essentially create that same issue in a year's time when we need to replace the other fleet vehicles. So that really isn't a viable solution for funding right now, and that's why we recommended the reserving funding instead.
I had another question that I had forgotten about, which is just like granted this is a bit operational, but it says that currently staff rely on the shared fleet that's based out of Pemberton or personal vehicles. I was unclear if the proposal is that this vehicle is not based here or if it is based here, and if like how does it address that issue of being based in Pemberton? Yeah, curious about that.
I can add this because it's an operational conversation that we're having internally, and that is undecided right now. If the majority of our travel is going beyond Pemberton, and having it in Pemberton makes sense, and that's where we're at this point. It's an operational decision that we might change.
I think the truck should be based with the person that's gonna be using it the most, not running around looking for the truck again. So anyways, if this truck is for emergency services, it should be dedicated to them. So.
Which is why it's being paid for the way it's being paid for and not coming out of general government. We're not adding to the.
It's been moved and seconded, let's
Thank you. We'll call the
Call the
question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? I have 3 opposed, 4 opposed.
Okay, and the names of those directors opposed?
Director Rasmussen, Director Crompton, Director Stoner, and Director Tamara. Anyone else? Okay, motion still carries. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Can I make a comment?
We
Or
generally
no?
don't make comments after the motion because would it influence the decision that has already been passed?
No, probably not.
Go ahead then.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to say that it's appreciated and that the amount of time that the actual, emergency services goes to Shalath to go to Area B, and that there is a vehicle that's needed for sure. So even though I opposed, I definitely understand the need for a vehicle, that there's a lot of support being given up there. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Draft policy number 34, administrative overhead allocation policy, and we have Director of Finance. Here's, what you do, job title. Nice to see you. I can't read it from here other than your name, but that's all good. Over to you.
Suzanne Franz, Director of Finance, and we're here to recommend a new board policy for administrative overhead allocation. It is policy number 54. And which will replace the current policy we have, which was number 22.6, administration charge, which is from 2000 actually, just from 2000, the year 2000. The new policy looks at all of the indirect general government administrative expenses, which are also called overhead costs. And these include costs that can't be directly attributed to a specific service, project, program, or activity, but are still necessary for the whole organization to function. As an example, the main SLRD office building here and associated expenses, these costs are then allocated to the service of the SLRD and shown as an overhead revenue into general government. The Local Government Act states that all costs that can be directly attributed to a service need to be charged to that service, and the regional district has discretion on determining how indirect costs are allocated to their provided services. We've reviewed peer regional districts for what they have done for their allocation costs. And I'll turn it over to Phil. How big thing is the count, we'll discuss more about the policy.
Thanks, Susan. So as Susan mentioned, we looked at other regional districts across British Columbia and what they're doing for this. The regional district that we reviewed were Central Okanagan, Nanaimo, Okanagan, Similkameen, and the Sunshine Coast. And the approaches generally fall into four main models. The model 1 is a single uniform rate applied to every cost center. It's very simple, but it's getting harder to defend as our services become more diverse. And this is the one we had from 2000. And model 2 is a tiered rate model. And this is the foundation we are recommending for the new policy. So we keep one base percentage and then we apply it using service bands. And the service bands are full scope, limited scope, and minimal scope with percentage modifiers. It is simple, but much more fair. The Model 3 uses multiple cost drivers. And this is the most precise model, but it's also the most time consuming and complicated. And then Model 4 is a combination model, and that's the one we recommend. And it's basically taking one of the other three models, but also using a flat administrative fees for low intensity or pass-through services. And so Model 4 gives us a good balance of fairness and transparency without creating a lot of extra work for staff. And I'll turn it over to Susanne again.
Yeah, so the goal is to retrieve a portion of the indirect corporate administrative costs back into general government. And our proposal to do this is a collaborative proposal during the annual budget review for all of the leadership team to come together and analyze the services, give them a scope of full, minimal, and limited. And so together we'll develop these service charges, make sure that we're not making a service unsustainable. And it'll be a gradual phase in. If there is a lot of administrative costs that should be attributed to a service, in 1 year, we'll phase it in, so it's a gradual implementation of this. So we did some preliminary review of what this might look like. And currently we're recovering about $259,000 into general government. And with this new 3-tiered solution with the flat fee option as well. So sometimes we just go to the flat fee if it's just a pass-through service where we're receiving funding and we're just sending funding back. There's not a lot of administrative work. Those who receive just a flat fee. So basically the flat fee would be the lowest fee we'll charge each service for these indirect administrative costs. We're suggesting to increase the flat fee from 250 to 750. This 250 fee is from year 2000. So we're just moderately increasing it to 500. But this also can be discussed as a group during the budget discussion for what that flat fee should be. And it'll be proposed to the board during the budget process for approval. And just this way, it's more holistic. We're looking at all the risks of each service, all of the impacts that this might have. And yeah, it's just an estimate at this point. And like I said, as we do our budgeting process, we'll review what those costs would be for all of our services. And I'll just turn it back to Celia for final considerations.
Yeah, some other consideration. The policy supports strategic priorities around responsible governance and service excellence, and it strengthens financial sustainability and transparency. And so the board has 3 options today. First is to approve the policy as presented, approve it with any changes you'd like to direct, or the third, give us direction and ask us to bring back a revised. You want to say something about next steps?
I'll just open up for questions at this point to the board.
Director Pettingill, you're next.
Yeah, and maybe there's something I'm misunderstanding, but in my mind, typically when I interact with, why is it in this fund or that fund, or why do we do it this way? It's these provincial rules or accounting generally accepted practices and so on. And so I guess I have a bit of a question of why is there not just a recommendation to rescind the policy and sort of leave this up to the sort of folks with the accounting. It feels a little bit strange for me that we would be, as a board, sort of dictating this specific accounting process? Like it normally seems like professional standards and so on and provincial rules take care of sort of dictate what these should be and or the sort of professionals doing the accounting.
That does touch on it. Basically, when there is direct costs, they are attributed to that service for regional districts. But for indirect, we have that ability to pick however we want to direct these costs. So it normally is a board policy. So that's why it's brought to the board today. And you're right, the policy basically lets the staff decide what each service can handle and what that indirect cost will be. That will be refunded back to general government. But the board would then approve that. So I think that's why it's coming to the board as a policy.
Thank you to the chair. A few questions on the policy as proposed. I don't think I'm entirely clear on the differentiation between minimal scope and when a flat fee would be used. And I just wonder if we can streamline that and just say if there's minimal scope, it's just the flat fee, or what the purpose is for having that percentage and modifier for.
Yeah, so the three service bands, the full is basically for full departments like the planning and building department and the emergency planning and effective services department. They require all of the corporate costs. So they would get the full base percentage, that's full scope. And then we have limited, which is basically half of that so far. But these percentages can be changed during the annual review. So basically, the limited scope would be 3.5% of their budgeted costs, operating costs. And the limited would then be 0.5% of their operating costs. And sometimes that limited is actually less than the flat fee, and then we would just go to the flat fee as the minimal amount to charge. So, and then within the minimals, we would also look at whether they should just be a flat fee. So it's really 4 different classifications we're looking at. Full, limited.
Do we have a sense of like how much interplay there might be between like the flat fee and the minimal scope? It feels.
They're very similar, but you don't always have to have a flat fee. Sometimes the minimal scope is a little higher than the flat fee, and we would just keep it that way. But when I did my first kind of review of this policy, there were some that are even lower than the flat fee using that minimal scope. So we just went right to the flat fee. So that flat fee will be the minimum charge we would charge.
But at the very least, I think adding like that line in the table as presented in the policy would be helpful as like the fair visual of like you're paying a minimum of 750, and then if it's above that in the minimum scope, then that's how we would calculate it. Right now, the way it reads to me is a little bit confusing as to when it would be a minimal scope versus a flat fee.
It could be either, and that's how we meant to have it. So if the minimal scope is less than the flat fee, we would automatically go to the flat fee. But we can still keep it at the minimal scope.
I'll think about that for a sec. My other question was on in the staff report, it says that certain services facing large increases have been capped to a maximum of $10,000 increase for the first year. And I don't have a sense of like how substantive that might be for some of the services. And so I'm just curious about how we address that, and whether that's a discussion at the budgeting process forthcoming, or if that's something that we need to know now as we talk about the policy.
No, I don't think you need to know now. Like the policy is very flexible on purpose to allow these phasing in of these administrative costs, overhead costs. So for example, the one service that was over 10,000 was emergency planning and protective services, because their operating budget has increased quite a bit over the last year. So that's why we monitor the increase and make sure we're just phasing it in.
And then my last question was, in the previous policy, there was some specific, albeit confusing language around the costs incurred if establishment or amendment of a local service area fails, and how to allocate those costs. And we've lost that language in the new policy. And so I'm just curious if we need to retain that or how we address that component.
You know, typically it's not included in an administrative overhead policy, and that those are the local government act kind of driven. So when you're trying to establish a new service, typically all of the costs to establish that service would then transfer to that service. So including legal, consultant time. But if that service fails, that would just stay in general government.
The previous policy says it goes to the select service exhibit, which I don't even know what that is.
That's select funds, yeah.
So that's different than it going back to general government.
Yeah, and yeah, I wouldn't suggest it going to select fund. So it's really just going towards what the local government act requests. It stays in general government.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Would anyone like to move?
Sorry, before it does
Go
get
ahead,
moved,
yeah.
on page 184, I am still confused about the differentiation between minimal scope and flat fees. And I don't know if anybody else is confused, and I just need to reread it a few times, but
Can you give us clarity?
I can give you, I like your suggestion of adding it to that band. So we have full scope, limited scope, minimal scope, and then we have the minimum fee that would be charged. Yeah. And then that's the band, that 4-step grid is what staff will analyze. So perhaps adding that will help that clarity. That would be helpful to my brain.
You might need a little bit of a review, because we do talk about the flat fee as being an option for the limited scope in the policy. So we'll just review that policy to make sure it's clear when we're gonna use the flat fee.
So then would the motion be to refer this back to staff and have you come back with the revisions as suggested, or are you happy for us to adopt and then come back with revisions?
Sorry, I'm not quite understanding what you're saying.
Are you happy to adopt it?
I would like to refer it back to staff to clarify the language between minimal scope and minimum fee and flat fee.
As just was discussed. We're comfortable with that? It's a small revision, but it's important enough that. Yeah, go ahead.
That was second year, that felt like emotions.
Yeah. You're seconding to refer this back to staff and have to come back with the revisions.
I just wanted to ask one more question. So this policy is out of date by a lot of years, like how have. And then there's a significant increase now to cover off the costs needed to apply for things like the building and such. How have we been managing for that long without that money?
The revenue comes into general government as an overhead allocation revenue. So otherwise it's just not in that general government revenue. So we're just trying to make it equitable and fair for those indirect administration costs.
Okay, right.
Applying it to
Not a new cost.
Not a new cost. Exactly, it's not a new cost. That's what I was trying to get at, but it's going to now just be spread over programs. Okay, gotcha. This was a hard one. I just wanted to say to everyone, this was tough. This was a really tough one. I found the language to be super complex and yeah, and it's not my expertise, but I found it hard to understand. So thank you, Director Jennifer or Stoner, for asking all those good questions, and the explanation really helped.
And we won't see it again for another 26 years.
Budget.
I'm just kidding.
It's dynamic every year. Budget.
Okay, we have the motion on the floor to refer this back to staff. for those revisions by Jenna Stoner, seconded by Director Herford. Any further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Not done yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. 306. Right. All right. Well done. We got tomorrow. Go ahead. Colin Hodgins.
Back.
Speak to us about the Community Works Fund, third-party project application.
Sure. Yeah, this is a request for decision to allocate community works funds from the Area C Community Works Fund Reserve towards the Lillooet Nation's Sweat Lodge project. We received a request for funding from Lillooet Nation for their cultural sweat lodge, and we identified that this project might be eligible for community works funds. As I've mentioned in the past, there have been new requirements added to the Community Works Fund program for third-party projects. These projects now require approval from UBCM before the SLRD can allocate funds to any third-party recipients. We feel that this project could be eligible for third-party approval because of its alignment with the board's strategic directives and the other requirements that UBCM has. So in this report, I've requested or we're requesting that the board pass a resolution that kind of outlines the different requirements that the Community Works Fund program now requires. Just that this project has not kind of identifying this as a strategic priority of the board, and that there's an asset management plan and a few other things. And that is a requirement to send to UBCM to get the application submitted. Also, in talking to Lillooet Nation, they provided a full budget for this project. It's $36,000, and we're providing $6,000 of funding. And this project is very much underway and ongoing. So that's why I've requested the funding to be allocated so that we can apply to UBCM. And once that, if it's approved, then we can continue with trying to sign the Community Works Fund agreement with Lillooet and provide them with funding. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. I know it's a bit of a new complex process with the UBCM, but we have not been through it before too. So this will be our first time going to UBCM for approval. And we feel like this is a good project to kind of test that process out.
Great, thank you. Director Rainbow, I see you first for a question.
Yeah, Colin, thanks for getting the full amount, which we didn't have the last time we talked about this. It still seems rather low to me for a building that is going to presumably last a long time. So that's that. But my question would be, if UBCM turned this down, do we have a backup plan? Do we have an alternative we could consider? Is this an appropriate time to talk about that?
If it was not approved, we would have to bring something back to the board, and we could potentially look at alternative sources of funding. I don't have anything that I would recommend today. I'm hopeful that this would get approved. But if it were to be declined by UBCM, then we could bring it back to another meeting to try and address that drop.
Okay, I hope it's approved. But if not, then I personally would like to see it brought back for further discussion.
Okay, Director Rasmussen, you're next.
I just had a question about so I think this is a great project, and the idea of being able to support it, of course, is really good, especially they're asking us directly. The thing when I was reviewing the application piece with this CWF funding is it asks in the second whether the project is the project for public use or public benefit, yes or no, and the public use and the benefit were all yeses from staff bringing that forward. But is it really a community open to the community is my question. Because it says also, does this project result in service that is not limited by private membership? But from the letter from Lillooet, it's for their community. And they said they would open it up to surrounding communities, which I assumed when it's a sweat lodge, this is for First Nations. This is a cultural healing thing. If, so non-Indigenous involvement could jeopardize healing. So I'm wondering about the rationale there, because it doesn't seem to align with the yeses. I would look at this and say they should be no's.
Yeah, and from our understanding is that Lillooet is gonna be opening the sweat lodge to the public and offering sessions to First Nations population. So we don't necessarily require it to be open to the public 24/7. A lot of facilities that we find aren't, but as long as there is a public portion to the property, then we can support it through the community works funds.
I see, okay. Okay.
Right, any other questions? Who would like to support and move the motion? Director Gifford, seconded by Director Mack. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Right, thank you, Colin. Right, now we have a bunch of correspondence for action. There's a letter of request from the RDOS regarding writing a letter to Premier AB regarding Bill M-214 Firefighters Health Act and its associated operational and financial implications for rural and volunteer fire services. Would you like to write the letter?
Yeah, it says letter to Minister Evie
Premier. Oh,
in the top part.
oh, yeah, in the title.
Yeah, it should,
That was in
that should
there.
be Premier, obviously.
Yeah. That was just a. Here, I mean, he is technically a minister, he's the. He's an MLA. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Crompton. Comments? All in favor?
Comments? Just, whoa, where's my thing? Can I make a comment?
Please do.
Yeah, I think that we absolutely have to support this letter. The province is downloading all kinds of costs on local firefighting groups, and our costs in Area D wouldn't be as much as in the Okanagan, but it would still be significant. And I think the province is out of order. So I strongly support this.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. There was an invitation for feedback from Metro Vancouver regarding their draft solid waste management plan. We did a presentation from them several months ago. Do we have?
If you have questions, I can ask them on.
Any questions? Or are we just receiving? Is that where you wanted to go? You don't have a decision, you don't have strong feelings one way or the other, got it.
I was hoping to test a motion to provide some feedback, but.
Okay. You can do that,
Um,
there's no motion on the floor, so.
yeah, I'm just sort of wanting to make sure I do this because there are a few key points I wanted to hit on. It's sort of I guess my motion would be that the board provide some high level feedback to the MVRD. We leave it there and then discuss what that feedback might be.
I really don't like motions that don't have sort of staff support and feedback based on, you know what I mean? Like we're sort of making it up as we go and I feel uncomfortable with that. If you have a specific item that you want to share feedback based on.
Well, so maybe I'll start with comments and see where we go from there.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, and I talked to the chair of the FVRD and Zero Waste BC, because I've been following this a little bit, and I heard actually a number of concerns and tried to sort of sort through what are particularly relevant to us as another regional district. And so a few things that stood out to me is the importance of Metro Van as a real leader in pulling the whole lower mainland forward in terms of management and sort of some concern, which I saw when I read this about a bit of a lack of specificity. There are some specific metrics and timelines, but in terms of budgets, there's a very high level budget of like $500 capital over 5 years, I think, and then really not much about how much they're spending on specific tasks and so on. And so I guess some concern about, I guess hopefully some encouragement to step up the ambition, but also there's more loads apparently going between regions. So when we make a regulation here, then just waste goes into a dump down there and vice versa and so on. And so appreciation of more language, maybe hauler licensing, which my understanding is Metro Van could lead better than we could, to sort of wrap our heads around his lower mainland about some of these movement of waste issues. And then the other big thing is the handling of an incineration. In terms of air quality impacts, it's a bit more of a direct issue for the SLRD. But there are significant concerns about dioxins, which then get in the water, concentrate the fish and so on. I think in terms of the treatment of it, there's a lot of discussion in the plan about the affordability of incineration and how great it is, but there's actually no attention to the fact that for 10 years they haven't been meeting emissions requirements. They haven't, and their argument for doing that is like, it's way too expensive for us to do the upgrades needed to meet the emissions. So let us figure out a way to not do the upgrades. And at the same time in this plan, they're claiming how affordable this incineration is. And so it, in terms of assessing the plan, when there's something like that sort of clear contradiction, it makes me like, what else is in here that sort of doesn't align? Because that didn't jump out at me. I had to have this explained from a few different sources to sort of understand and check more than one source to see. So those were I guess the top things that really jumped out at me as something where it might be a little relevant for us to comment on.
Anybody have any feedback to that or anything else that you wish to direct staff to comment on?
I like that feedback. I support that.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I'm supportive of this. I think the air quality issue is important for, well, we need it to breathe, but there's been lots of other measures taken to positively impact that, and this feels like a substantive piece that's under consideration going forward. So we should make that comment.
I mean, I would love to see them be required to support bringing back the Airshed Society, and because the monitoring that they used to do on our behalf was really robust, and unfortunately they lost their funding and they didn't have anyone that wanted to continue doing work because it was largely volunteer based. So it'd be great if Metro Van took that on. I don't think we can require them to do that through this process, but at least if we could make that comment that, you know, there's a desire for a little bit better oversight within, like you said, it is really, I mean, it's not one directional. Yes, the air travels east, but it still affects all of us. Okay, so I think you're putting forward a motion to support some feedback, direct staff to support the feedback based on the comments heard today. Moved by Director Pettingill, seconded by Director Richmond. Any further comments? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. You have letter writing to do.
Video.
Yeah, get our men, or you get us. Go ahead, Chris.
And just a question, like I would appreciate any feedback or guidance on a better way to handle this. Sometimes we've had staff actually speak to it and they've already got it and not need to say anything, and then other times and so it did feel a bit clumsy to bring it forward this way. I'm really not sure how else to do that, but.
It's all a matter of capacity.
I think it's okay, like we definitely go back and watch videos a lot of time to make sure we capture everything was said. Yeah.
All right, I'm calling the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, back to the Lower Fraser Floodplains Coalition, asking us to sign the joint statement. Based on the presentation that we heard this morning. Moving that.
Motion.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Mack. Any comments? I think everything was said this morning. All in favor?
Sorry, what was the motion? I couldn't hear.
That we are signing on to the joint statement.
Oh, okay, good.
Floodplain resilience in the Lower Mainland.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's not exclusively in the Lower Mainland. It is protection and stewardship for the Fraser River. With that, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. A request for a letter of support for the Ashley Creek Foundation Connecting Communities BC application in the Upper Squamish Valley Fiber Broadband Project. Director Rainbow, would you like to make the motion that we support them with a letter? Yes? Okay. Seconded by Director Richmond. Any comments? Fiber optic and any kind of connectivity that we can provide in our rural communities is important, and we continue to support these small communities in doing that work. So with that, I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Correspondence for information, 14.1. We have several letters from Mr. DeRusso, and I would ask that someone please move receipt. Moved by Director. Go ahead. You want to share them?
I would like to share that at the town hall, this question was asked and it was addressed. And we will be updating our contracts in order to recognize authority having jurisdiction. I want to recognize Fire Services Manager Bill Stoner. He's been great at these amendments and recognizing this.
Great, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Oh. Director Rainbow?
I'm assuming that he's totally out of order with his claim that
Director
about
Rainbow,
the authority.
we'll take that out of, rather than we're just receiving this information. I don't really want to get into content. All in favor of receiving the package of letters? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Any late business? Anyone? No. Great. Any notice of motion? None. We still have another 30
Move and ground.
Oh my God.
Metro Vancouver wants to do more of their work for them.
I do not. No, they've got a big enough budget to cover it. Great. No motion for which notice has been given. I'm going to recess this meeting until tomorrow.